by the magic that you see. Right? How is it that a lady who's right there before your eyes suddenly disappears? Appears like magic. But when your attention shifts from the show to the magician, then you understand the truth. The truth is that the magician is doing certain. He's just learned a skill, and it's that skill that appears like magic. Similarly, as long as you're looking at the world, you get carried away, you get entangled in this magic show. This most wonderful magic show that has been presented. But when you shift your attention to the magician, and the magician is Atman, then you see this wonderful Leela, this wonderful play of divinity in the world. And then you don't get excited, you don't get affected, you don't go through the ups and downs of life. Verse 15.
Namam dushkrutino mudhaha prapadyante naradhamaha mayaya paruta jnanaha asuram bhavamashhritaha.
The evildoers, dushkrutinaha, the foolish, mudhaha, the unrighteous, lowest of men, naradhamaha, very strong words that Krishna is using, whose wisdom is destroyed by Maya, illusion, do not seek me. They follow the path of the asuras, demons. Look at the language that he uses. Dushkrutina, evildoers. He doesn't say evil people. He says evildoers. All the evildoers in the world. See, one thing you must understand. The test of a good person is that the good person cannot believe that another person could do him harm. They cannot understand evil. So he only views, Krishna as a good person, he only views vicious people as evil doers, not evil by themselves. They're good people who, because of their ignorance, are doing evil. Otherwise, why will anybody consciously do evil? So you and I need to develop this Catholicity of view, where you don't look at people as evil. You look at people as good, but who are doing evil because of sheer ignorance, and then you are sympathetic towards them. How do you view a murderer who's got a death sentence? You don't view, hang him. You view him as, it's very unfortunate that he's a good person who's committing so much evil. He has to meet with the result. That's it. But you don't hate him. You know? This is what he's saying. Dushkrutinaha. And why is he dushkrutina? Why is he an evildoer? Because mudhaha, foolish, ignorant, deluded. And these deluded people commit unrighteous acts because of their delusion. You see, what happens is, you have desires, right? And when the desires mount to such, under ordinary circumstances, if you are able to fulfill these desires in the world, nobody takes to the path of evil. But when your desires cannot be fulfilled, when your desires mount to such an extent that they cannot be fulfilled by ethical, legal methods, you cross the line and commit unethical, illegal acts, unrighteous acts. So, unless you deal with desire, you cannot deal with the wrong that's going on in the world. What's happening in the world is desires are being nourished, desires are being promoted, and the financial institutions and banks tell you they're looking for bakras like you and me. They tell you, you can't afford to buy a car, don't worry. Buy it now, pay later. You can't afford to go on a holiday, don't worry, we'll take care of it. You just go on a holiday and worry about it later. So what are they doing in the bargain? Your desires are being fueled. And in the end, please remember this, the more mortgages you take, the more loans you take, the greater is your problem later on. So all that you're doing is shifting the problem to the future. And then you get caught. You get cornered into a situation where your desires far outstrip your assets. And when this imbalance takes place, that's when you get desperate and do all kinds of things. This is the life history of every criminal, every scamster, every whatever it is. It's the desires. So you need to deal with the desires. Where does this desire come from? Are you hungry? I'm unnecessarily introducing this. Yes or no? Yes. Why are you hungry? When you are hungry, what does it mean? Your stomach is empty. When your stomach is empty, the thought automatically arises in your mind for an object called food. After you've eaten a full meal, if your friend rings up and says, "Come on, we're all going out to dinner, please join us," what will you say? You don't say, "No, thank you." You say, "Let's postpone it to another day." But anyway, for the time being, you say no. So therefore, from this you understand that wherever there is a desire, there is an underlying sense of emptiness, an incompleteness, a void. And this sense of emptiness haunts us right through our lives. From birth to death, from morning to night, it never ever leaves us. Out of that emptiness come thoughts in your mind that go rushing out into the world to acquire things in the belief that with the acquisition of worldly things, this emptiness will go. And fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know what to call it, for us, from birth till now, you have fulfilled so many desires. Is that not true? Has the emptiness gone? Has it reduced? No. Has it ever occurred to you that there must be something fundamentally wrong with the way I'm going about it? It's occurred to you. Yeah, very good. That's why you're here. And when the thought comes to you that there must be something fundamentally wrong with my search, with my approach, with the way I'm living life, then there is this transformation to find out what it is that is causing this emptiness. So Vedanta tells us that if you were, that this sense of emptiness that you're experiencing itself is imagination. It's an imaginary emptiness, it's not real. If it were real, you can feel it. If it's imaginary, how can you feel it? If the emptiness is imaginary, the only way out is what? Not supplying objects of desire, but knowledge, correct. The moment you're provided knowledge of what? Fullness, excellent. You know it all. You don't need chapter 7. The moment you come to understand your fullness, you no longer experience the emptiness. The thought lava that's going from you to the world will automatically cease. That is the Maya that he's talking about. And your wisdom, which means knowledge of your fullness, gets destroyed by Maya illusion. And therefore you don't seek me means you don't seek knowledge. You get lost in the pursuit of worldly objects and desires. It's never ending. It just goes on and on and on until it consumes you. And all of us are in various stages of consumption, internally getting consumed by this desire. So, wisdom is shrouded by this Maya. And the evildoers, the foolish, the unrighteous, it's not their fault, they just don't see it. This knowledge is not available to them, it's not accessible to them. Unlike all of us, We have this wonderful knowledge accessible, available to us. What are we doing about it is the question. Are we using it to remove this veil of ignorance and arriving at the truth is the question. So the evildoers, the foolish, the unrighteous follow the path of the asuras, demons. What happens next? We'll see verse 16.
चतुर्विधा भजन्ते मां जना सुकृतिनोऽर्जुन आर्तो जिज्ञासुरर्थार्थी ज्ञानी च भरतर्षभ.
With this verse, we enter the fourth topic, which deals with the four noble categories that turn to God, verses 16 to 19. This is the fourth topic. So what is he saying here? In the last verse, he spoke of the dushkrutinaha, the evildoers, the unrighteous people, the deluded people. Separate from these, there are four noble categories. O Arjuna, four kinds of virtuous people worship me. And the four kinds are the artha, distressed, the jidnyasu, seeker of knowledge, the artharthi, seeker of wealth, and the jnani, the wise, O Bharatarshava, bull among the Bharatas. He so lovingly addresses Arjuna. In one verse, he uses two names, Arjuna, Bharatarshava. That speaks of the immense affection and love that Krishna has for Arjuna. So, the Sukrutinaha, the good people, belong to four categories. This is a masterly presentation. Masterly presentation of an analysis of all the different kinds of people who turn to God and how the first three categories, the artha, distressed, artharthi, wealth seeker, jidnyasu, knowledge seeker, have their limitations and therefore don't reach the ultimate good. And the fourth category, jnani, is the true seeker who reaches the goal. So these four categories, artharthi is one who approaches God or visits a temple, church, mosque, whatever it is, only because he wants monetary benefit. You see, in business what happens? Either you, what is that called? Mergers and acquisitions or partnerships. So here is a businessman who decides, among all the people whom I can partner with, the best partner is God. So he goes to Tirupati and appoints God as a partner. 51 my share, there also he wants to shortchange God. 51% is mine, 49% is God's. And then he says, he puts X amount of money in the hundi in the hope and expectation that he will get maybe 5 times that amount. Artharthi. A lot of people belong to this category. Now, see, it's not only wealth, it's success. One day before board exams, you go to Siddhivinayak, extra long queue. It doesn't work. If the whole year you haven't picked up a book, and last day, even on the last day you're not picking up a book, you go to Siddhivinayak, how on earth will you succeed? So anyway, artharthi. Then artaha, a large percentage of people turn to spirituality because they are distressed, they are in trouble. And then they go to God. The moment the trouble is eased, the moment they overcome the problem, what happens? They're back to the world. Forget about God completely. Third, jidnyasu, intellectual curiosity. Is there life after death? I've studied all the other chapters except chapter 7, that's why I've come here. And after chapter 7, what happens? They believe liberation. No such thing. Intellectual curiosity. The last is ajnani, self-oblivious, non-utilitarian worship of God. You know what that is? The wise person is one who doesn't expect kickbacks. Yeah? Every other category wants some kickback or the other. This is the right term. Whoever coined this term, kickback, is correct because you get kicked. No return expected. You know, Prahlada, one of the greatest child devotees of the Lord Vishnu, what happens is he was the son of this demon Hiranyakashipu. And when the Lord appeared in this terrible form of Narasimhan, half lion, half human, in the court, in his father's court, everyone else was trembling in their shoes except Prahlada, who stood there calm and fearless and watched Narasimhan destroy all these evil people. And then Narasimhan offers him a boon. When he offers him a boon, he says, listen, I am not a Vanya. I am not a trader. All this devotion that I have given to you is not because I wanted something else in return. You keep your boon, he says. This is it. A jnani, a true seeker, is one who doesn't expect anything in return. That jnani follows this principle not only with reference to God, even in the world. Even in the world, if you and I lift ourselves to that capacity of just doing what you think you ought to do without expecting a reward. This is what Krishna in chapter 6 defines as a sannyasi. Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotyah. If you can just do what you have to do. As a member of the family, do what you have to do. As an individual, you have certain obligations. Perform these obligations. Not because you want a return. Problem today is everything has become commercialized, including spirituality. You know what it is? You go to an institution, if you give a donation of 1 crore, you will be made president of the trust. This is the deals that are being... it's absurd. Absurd to even in the world expect a return, and much less with God. So this is what he's saying here, the jnani. And then he continues in the next verse, he tells us what happens. Among the 4 categories, what happens? 17.
Tesham